Okay.
Silakan.
Okay, good evening to Madam Shavina. So today our group will be presenting the cognitive psychology for the cognitive psychology assignment, which consists of visual perception, speech perception, and face recognition. So my name is Maria Sofea, and I will be presenting the introduction. Next. Okay, so what is cognitive psychology? Cognitive psychology is basically the study of how the mind processes information that we get from the outside and interpret it in our brain. So this information processing that takes place in people's mind is including perception, attention, language, memory, thinking, and also our consciousness. So in this assignment, there's three types of perception that we will talk about. The first one is visual perception. So what is visual perception? Basically, it's how our brain interpret the data that we gathered from our eyes. So basically, our ability to see is vital when we have to move, writing, or reading. Face recognition is a crucial ability that we have to learn because it helps us to recognize people based on their faces, based on their facial features, and so on and so forth. And this will help us to recognize our family members, peers, and many more. And speech perception is actually an ability for someone to interpret sound to become words. So that means when people talk, they will produce a sound, right? So they produce a sound and our brain will interpret it to become words that we can recognize and we can actually respond to those words. Next, I'll pass it to the next presenter.
Hello and good day, Madam Shabina. My name is Lyana and I'm gonna present about the case study background. So our case subject is a lecturer. She is 26 years old and she is one of the lecturers from private university in Malaysia. So for her previous education includes a diploma in public administration from UiTM Rao, bachelor in administrative science, political science, and from UiTM Seremban, and also master in executive and administrative science, political science from UiTM Shah Alam. So before being a lecturer, she worked as a tutor for secondary school since 2019. After that, she pursued her dream job in one of the private university, and it has been 5 months since she joined the university. As for her daily routine of being a lecturer, she commute to her current workplace by car, and then she reads up all the contents um, of the contents of the subject that she's going to lecture. She also prepared for all her slides, teaches her students and assigns her students with assignments. And she also meet with her supervisor in order to ask her opinion or guidance before she conduct the class. That's all for me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Okay, hello everyone and good day to Madam Shabina. So, I will be presenting about visual perception analysis. As we all learn, visual perception, there are two processes, which is bottom-up processing and also top-down processing. So for the bottom-up processing, the process start when a person receives a stimuli from their perception, which is the five senses. So for visual perception, the processes will start when a person will be receiving information from their eyes, and the retina will then give the signal that will be convert to transduction into electrical impulse. So the the visual experience will then be sent to the visual cortex, through the visual pathways in the brain. So, as for the interviewee mentioned, her bottom-up processing was when she entered a class, and as she skimmed through all of the faces of students that are in the class, although she not really able to recognize the faces, but as she used the attendance list, she was able to recognize students that are there in class and also those that are absent from the class. And next is top-down processing. So for top-down processing, of course, it is similar, which is the person receives a stimuli from the perception. But however, for top-down processing, when the information is received, the brain will make a hypothesis based on the knowledge that are there in the brain to acknowledge what is the information similar to. And however, usually the hypothesis will not be always right. So to make it related with the interviewee action, she mentioned that when she was marking the examination paper, she able to acknowledge what is the arguments that the student wrote, even though the writing of the students is very and also there are some that are hard to read. So she was able to acknowledge the arguments due to because before examination she used to give the students exercises that are similar to the question base of for exam, so that she know what point that the student may use. However, she cannot anticipate the what kind of typical explanation that the student use, because even though the main point is able to be recognized, the students' way of explanation might be vary. So that is how the interviewee mentioned about top-down processing action. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay. So hi and good day, madam. My name is Hazirah Azyan. So today I'll be presenting about the face recognition. So, have you ever wondered why we can like recognize the face of our friends, even though basically our size and shape of the face is similar? So this is what we call face recognition ability. Somehow we could all agree that perception is the the greatest human greatest specialty. So as you could see in question 3, we did ask would the interviewee be able to recognize other student that randomly joined the class, and then she answered that if it's during the early week of the semester, she might not be able to recognize them as some of the students are also wearing masks. So basically she taking her time to know her student. And then the next question we ask is if she saw someone walk past or anyone wear mask past her, do she find herself to have an expectation on how they would look like? So she did say yes, because as we are living in the pandemic era, she said that we have to wear masks, and she found that it is very difficult to understand others' facial expression and also their emotions, which made it hard for her to approach her supervisor and also the student without knowing their mood at the current moment. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So, research that conducted in United Kingdom in the year of 2020, the researchers stressed on how face recognition affect by mask and also sunglasses, because it is very important for us to identify the expression of others in our daily conversation. This is because in my part, I did stress about the face recognition during the pandemic, because our interview, which is a lecturer and also a student back then, because she is a tutor previously. So somehow she did affected by the COVID-19, where we have to learn online. So she said that she still adapting and adjusting to the current situation, where her visual cues, um, which is the lip reading, is blocked. So somehow she's still adjusting to that, but um, now I think she did mention that she's um, doing great with the face recognition, even though the student is wearing mask. Okay, so let's move on to speech perception. So next slide, please. Thank you. So speech perception is the ability for us to recognize basically recognize recognize and interpret others' words. So living in this post-pandemic era, which I believe we still struggle to interpret others. So does our interviewee. So she mentioned about the difficulties of understanding other person word in a conversation, because as I mentioned just now, the visual cue, or she wasn't able to lip read um other people's. So let's move on to the question one. So we did ask about did she find herself struggle to understand the content of the conversation? And then the next question is, does she find it difficult for her to understand the conversation when she unable to lip read? So I'll present on the next slide why is it hard for us to understand the conversation when we can't lip read. L- lip reading. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So a research done in Korea in 2021 proved that not wearing a face mask, not wearing a face mask, help their speech recognition, because there is the visual cue, which is the lip reading. So if we wear the face mask, and have to communicate, it is hard for others to understand us, because obviously the face mask is blocking our voice, so it toned down, and then we can't see half of the faces. So there are two difficulties that we have to encounter, which is the inability to lip read, and also the inability to understand others expression. So in a conclusion, wearing face mask and having to communicate with the international student, which the lecturer, our interviewee, mentioned that she also teach international student. So when the student wearing face mask and she has to communicate with the international student, she did say that it is the biggest challenge to fully distinguish what their words and sentence, because they also have their own native language, their own we could say dialect, because each country have their own way to speak. So she did struggle about that, but so far she's doing well. So that's all from me. Let's move on to the next presenter.
Okay, so for the conclusion, to sum it all up, cognitive psychology is very important, especially to understand memory, attention, and learning processes, because as we know, cognition is mostly on the brain. So how our brain is basically like the key point in our life, and all this perception that we had during our daily life, like speech perception, face recognition, and visual perception, It happens every day. It happens every time, right? So by understanding how these processes work, it helps can also shed light on all these cognitive disorders and also how people behave in their daily life. So that's all from us. Thank you so much.